Hello. I hope you've had a very good week since we had our last Alshich Shiur. Welcome to the Alshich Shiur. The parsha this week is Shlach, the story of the Meraglim, and lots more actually. However, we're going to focus just on the Meraglim, or the beginning of their story. This week's Shiur is dedicated to the name of Rivka Bas Binyamin Halevi. And let me remind you, if you have a loved one you'd like to dedicate the Shiur in their memory, then please get in touch with or email yy@rabbiyyy.com, yy@rabbiyyy.com, and we'll be more than honored to dedicate the Shiur in the name of one of your loved ones. Let's move straight to the Seder of Shlach. The Alshich here is astonishingly brilliant. It's of course one of the most dramatic of all the parshas in the Torah. It has again, for the second time, Klal Yisrael's fate hanging by a thread. If it wasn't for the intervention of Moshe Rabbeinu, we wouldn't be having this Shiur. However, it's only through the eyes or wearing the glasses of the Alshich, that you see the detail of the posuk, which provokes you to ask questions in his unique way. So let's see if we can do that. I'll read to you we're only going to look at a few pasukim, just to get a feel of what the story is, and then I'll go over it slowly with the Alshich. It'd be good if you had a chumash. V'yidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, and Hashem speaks to Moshe, and he says, Shlach l'cho anoshim, send for you men, v'yisuris eretz Canaan, and they will spy out the land of Canaan, asher ani nosein b'nei Yisrael, which I'm giving to the Jewish people. Ish echad, one man, lamata of us of his father's tribes, tishlochu, you should send, kol nosi bahem, each one should be a prince. V'yishlach Isa Moshe b'midbar Paran, and Moshe sends them, Al pi Hashem, the instruction of Hashem. Kulam anoshim, all of them were anoshim, men. Roshi b'nei Yisrael hema, they were the heads of the Jewish people. Okay, that's the pasuk, or the psukim. Let's look at that again. The Alshich, first of all, he wants to know why it says Shlach l'cho, send l'cho, to you, for you. Why didn't it just say Shlach? What's that l'cho? Now Rashi says here, the l'cho refers to the fact that Hashem says, I promised them it was a good land. And now they want to send in spies. Okay, I'll give them the opportunity to make a mess of this because there is Bechira. I promised it was okay, so why are they asking for spies? So therefore the l'cho, the extra word l'cho, according to Rashi, means that it's telling them it's your decision. The Alshich spots the problem, same problem that Rashi spots, why they say the extra word l'cho, but his answer is very different. His answer is, he questions Rashi and he says, really, if that's what the extra l'cho means, what about lech l'cho? When Hashem says to Avram Avinu, lech l'cho, it's up to you. I'm not telling you what to do. Lech l'cho means go for you. And the Alshich says that means the same thing here, but I'll explain that in a second. Let's get the questions. Shlach l'cho, anoshim, stand for yourself, men. That means safely assume not women. But the question therefore is, why does it say men? Rather obvious. But Yisuru, and they will spy out, is Eretz Canaan, the land of Canaan, asher ani nosein b'nei Yisrael, which I am giving to the Jewish people. Really? Oh, says the Alshich. Oh, the land of Israel you're giving to the Jewish people, not Alaska, not Soweto in South Africa. No. Why does it say that? We know this. Remember, if Hashem writes it, it's telling us something, it's teaching us something, and that's teaching us nothing, we already know it. So if we already know it, it's not coming to teach us something we already know. It's going to be teaching us something we don't know, something else. And the Alshich will tell us what in a second. Then it says, Ish echad lamata voisav. Each man from his father's tribe, tishlochu, you've got to send them, each one who is a prince. Each tribe has a prince, and that's who you've got to send. And Kulam Anoshim, Moshe sends them, they were all, again, men. It repeats that they were men. I hope you got the questions. Well, I'll come to some of the answers. So the Alshich says something which is incredibly important. I think it's fabulous. He says the following thing. Shlach l'cho anoshim. So what does l'cho mean? Our first question. Send l'cho, for you. That's exactly what the Alshich says as the translation. Send for you. The Rabban Shem said, I promised them a good land. I promised them a good land. And now they're coming to ask, maybe we should send in spies? No, says the Alshich, there are two reasons why you would send in spies. First of all, you'll send in spies in order to see whether the land is indeed beautiful and fruitful and all that sort of stuff. Second of all, you send in spies to see whether or not the people you're going to be facing in battle, whom you're going to dispossess and take this land that God's told you to take, maybe they are mighty and strong, and indeed the spies come back with the worrying report that Amalek is there. So there's two reasons why you would send in spies. One, maybe the land's not very up to much. Or two, maybe their soldiers are. That's why it says here, the rather obvious, or the question we raised, the obvious question, send in spies to spy out the land of Canaan, Asher ani nosen mifnei Israel, which I'm giving to the land of Israel. But we know that. So as I said, or rather, as the Alshich says, if it's not telling us something which we already know, it's going to be telling us something we don't know. And what is that? So he says a very intriguing idea. When you give somebody a gift, give somebody a present, the quality of the gift is going to depend on two factors. The two factors are the giver and the getter. The person doing the giving and the person doing the getting. Now, as anybody who's been to my Shiur, I'm sure I've accidentally let slip in the past that Her Majesty the Queen of England asked to meet me once upon a time because she used to enjoy my radio broadcasts when I lived in England and regularly broadcast on BBC Radio. So I actually was invited to meet Her Majesty the Queen, which was quite a compliment. I moved to America and didn't quite fulfill that wish of hers. However, if I'd gone to see the Queen and I was to bring her a gift, I mean, when you're bringing the Queen of England a gift, it's got to be something substantial. When the Queen, for example, although she's 94, I think she's more or less given up flying abroad, but when she used to go on state visits, then people give gifts to the Queen, antique 2,000-year-old silver goblets from Mesopotamia or wherever it is. It's got to be something significant. It's not going to be a gift voucher to a bookshop. And so if it's the person you're giving the gift to is very important, it's going to be a very important gift. Conversely, if the Queen is the person doing the giving, instead of getting the gift, instead of receiving the gift, she's giving one, again, she can't give anything which is just a book token. She's the Queen of England. It would reflect badly in her. She's giving a gift to something which is really nice. That's the point here. It's not telling us that something we don't know. It's not telling us something we know, that the land of Israel was given to us. We know that. It's telling us something we don't know. And what was that? Who's doing the giving? Hashem says, Ani noisin. You are worried that the land is not up to much. It's not a good land. Ani noisin. The Eretz Canaan, Asher Ani noisin, which I am giving. I'm Hashem. Not a Queen of England or a King of England. Not a king of anywhere. The King of Kings. Could I give a substandard gift, a land which is no good? Would that make sense? Conversely, who am I giving to? I'm giving to Klal Yisrael. Asher Ani noisin livnei Yisrael. To Bnei Yisrael. My Bnei Yisrael. The Jewish people that I call in my Torah Bnei Bechori, my firstborn son, whom I love. Could I give you? So, as we said, as the Alshich says, the quality of the gift depends on the giver and the getter. Here, the giver is Hashem. Could you give a shmata gift? A land which is substandard? And he's giving it to the Jewish people. So, in other words, the entire, if that is the basis of their asking, the entire project is misconceived from the beginning. Of course it's going to be a good land. Oh, but maybe the reason, says the Alshich, that you're giving the land, they want to send the spies to the land, is because of the enemy that's there. Well, that makes sense. Except if Hashem has told you he's going to give you the land of Israel. If Hashem, now you saw what Hashem did to the Egyptians. Remember, at this stage, we're just months after the Jewish people have left the land of Israel, a year and a bit after the land of Egypt. They've seen what Hashem can do to a mighty society like Egypt and their army. So what are they worried about? Why would you send in spies? Because you're worried? I'm not so sure about that. Because after all, if he sends in spies because you're worried, if you've got Hashem on your side, it doesn't matter whether they have tanks and jet fighters and the latest technology and you're armed with bow and arrows. If you have Hashem, then you've got a secret weapon that nobody can beat. So whether it is you sent in spies because you were concerned about the quality of the land, this is ridiculous. Hashem's giving it, and to you. Or you're worried about the strength of the enemy? Really? You've nothing to worry about if you've got Hashem on your side. So it can't possibly be that. And as the Alshich pursues this, it's obvious that there is a worry. There's a certain lack of bitachon, of faith in Hashem. And saying I've said the word bitachon, I'm going to quote to you in a second what the Shar HaBitachon, the Shar Bitachon of the Chovos HaLevavos says on this very, very subject. But let me just rewind the tape and go back to the idea of sending in spies. Why would they have a lack of bitachon? Why would they be worried? It can't be because they don't think the land's going to be up to standard. It's a substandard place. It can't be because they're worried about the soldiers. That doesn't make any sense. Because you've got Hashem on your side, then who could stand against you? But what if you don't? What if you don't have Hashem on your side? Now again, let me take you back and rewind the tape to the beginning of the book of Bamidbar. And there the Jewish people, if you remember, are counted. And when they're counted, of course that's why the non-Jewish world calls the book Numbers. When they're counted, there's a Rashi, or the Ramban quotes a Rashi there. And the Rashi says that Kamoisha Omer Lekustener, it's as though you would say to the executioner, because the word Su'u Esrosh Koladas Ben Israel, Su'u meaning count the heads of all the Jewish people, but Su'u also means to elevate. And the Rashi says there, Su'u means Kamoisha Omer Lekustener, like you would say to the executioner, elevate their heads from its normal location, which is baffling to put it mildly. What does it mean? The Ramban says, why does Rashi say that? Oh, by the way, that Rashi doesn't exist in our version or in our editions of the Rashi and the Chumash. But the Ramban's version, it did exist. So we can see that Rashi existed from the fact that the Ramban questions it. But the Rashi says, how, that when it says count the Jewish people, it uses the word Su'u, which means to elevate, cut off their head. Now the Ramban says, why does Rashi translate it that way? It's true that Su'u can mean execute. You see the same word when Yosef is in prison with the Sarah Mashkim and the Sarah Oifin, and he says when they have the dreams, it is the dream of the wine butler, and he says to him, 3 days from now Hashem is going to Yisa, going to, here's the word Su'u again, going to elevate you and take you back to your job and give you your job back, your position back. When the baker hears such a nice interpretation, he says, oh, right, here's my dream. And Yosef listens to the dream and says, Hashem is going to Esau as Roshka, going to cut your head off. Now, so therefore, using the word Su'u, meaning to execute somebody, makes sense. It doesn't make sense. It is accurate. It's an accurate translation. But does it make sense here? God's counting you. Why would that be cut off their head? So the Ksav Sefer, he says something which is a fabulous insight. And he says the following thing. He says, you see, when the Jewish people, or when the spies bring back a bad report to the Jewish people, there's a reason for that. It's not that Hashem, or they doubted Hashem, could take them into the land of Israel. It's a question of, would he take us into the land of Israel? But he's promised it. He promised to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, promised it to Moshe. They'd heard about this. Yes, but something had changed. From the promise, something had changed. And what was that? They made the golden calf. They made the golden calf. And in making the golden calf, then maybe Hashem's torn up the contract, because we have torn up the contract by making the golden calf. Maybe he's not going to keep our promise. Maybe we don't have Hashem on our side. And therefore we would be worried. We would have to be worried. We would have to send spies. Not doubting Hashem, not a lack of bitachon in Hashem, a lack of bitachon in ourselves. Or to be more accurate, a lack of bitachon of our relationship with Hashem. But let's now go back to that Rashi. So Rashi says, Kamosha Omer Lekustener, as you say to the executioner. You see, when Hashem counts the Jewish people at the beginning of the book of Bamidbar, he's counting them as all the commentators say, as an expression of his love and affection for the Jewish people. Like a collector, somebody who's a philatelist, who's a stamp collector, or a numerist, somebody who collects coins. He takes out his coins and examines each piece. It's an expression of love. When Hashem counts the Jewish people, he's telling you, I love you. But he told them that he loved them after they made the Egel Azov, after they made the golden calf. They'd been forgiven. But they were still in doubt. They still weren't sure. It's what's called a frum Yetzirah. A frum Yetzirah is when the Yetzirah takes the best characteristics that a person possesses and uses those good characteristics for a very bad purpose. Makes it something sinister out of something which is benign and good. And that is to say, guilt. Sometimes it's good to feel guilt. Sometimes it's bad. And good guilt is but defined by that which makes you improve. Bad guilt is what is defined by something that just destroys you. This is a classic example of bad guilt. It's only there to destroy them. The Yetzirah introduces into these anashim, into these spies, bad guilt, a niggling doubt that perhaps Hashem has not quite forgiven you. Now, if he's counted us as an expression of his love for us, and we still get it wrong, does that make the offence worse or better than he hadn't counted us in the first place? Obviously much worse. If I count you, I tell you I forgive you, and you still do something wrong, then it makes it much worse. But the reason that they do this is because they don't think they are worthy. It's a frum Yetzirah. And so I said to you I was going to quote to you the Shar B'tochen of the Chavos Levavos. If I've got a whole shelf of them behind me, but I won't stop jump up to get this. Interestingly, I hope you know this book because it's one of the most important books for any Jew to own. I translated it and wrote a commentary on it because it's so fundamental, particularly for children to own. And after the introduction, which is very long, it's chapter 1. Chapter 1 of this book is very strange. Chapter 1 is 67 words. Now, 67 words is a paragraph. It's not a chapter. And yet the author, Rabbeinu Bachya, the author of this classic work, designates that as an entire chapter, but it's only 67 words. And the reason is because it's not a question of quantity, it's a question of quality. It's what those words are saying. And what the words are saying is, if you're a Baal B'tochen, you have to know that the nature of Hashem is that he will do good for you even when you don't deserve it. Sometimes Hashem will do good for you even if you continue to offend, in the hope that doing good to you, even when you're offending him, as it says in the classic work Talmud Devorah, will provoke you to regret and come back. You'll take the slap in the face that you give Hashem, that we give Hashem, in order to bring you back again. Because there's a father, and a father loves a child, and sometimes a father takes a tremendous hurt from the children and doesn't react, because he doesn't want to lose his children, to invite them back again. So the crucial 67 words of the first chapter is telling you that message. Hashem will forgive you even if you don't actually deserve the forgiveness. And that's a very interesting idea. Okay, so let's review what we said. Shlach l'cho anoshim. Send for yourself men, and they will spy out the land of Israel, which I'm giving to them. Shlach l'cho. Now, shlach l'cho means for you. Shlach for yourself. Now here, the Alshich quotes two incredibly interesting points. One, I'm going to reverse the order that he writes in the book. If you've got this version of the Alshich, it's in page Ayin Ches. He says, to understand what's really going on here, I have to tell you two things. One, he says, Moshe Rabbeinu's death. Ultimately, Moshe Rabbeinu's death and being buried outside the land of Israel was not because he did anything himself which could not have been adjusted or the damage repaired, and for him to be allowed to be buried inside the land of Israel. The ultimate reason that he was buried outside the land of Israel is because that generation of men who because they believed the spies would die outside the land of Israel, and notice I said men, the women didn't believe the report of the spies, they didn't cry, and the women, that generation, did go in to the land of Israel. It was the men who died there. And therefore, says the Alshich, and you can see this incidentally, when in later on in Devarim, when Moshe Rabbeinu is talking about the fact that Hashem said to him, when he pleaded for Eschanan in the parsha of Eschanan, and I pleaded with God to let me into the land of Israel, and famously Hashem said, "Don't ask me one more time, not even one more time." The implication, if he'd asked him one more time, Hashem would have to have given in and let him, because he didn't do something which was so bad that Hashem could not have forgiven it. So why then did he say, "Don't ask me one more time"? Why was it so crucial for Moshe not to be allowed into the land of Israel, to be buried outside? And he gives a moshel. And the moshel is that if you have, let's say somebody, let's say in Israel, big apartment blocks, somebody's walking in the street, and let's say there's a blackout, the electricity goes down, and he drops, I don't know, a coin on the ground. And he can't see, he's dropped this coin. So he shouts to everybody, "Help, somebody bring me down a flashlight, a torch. I can't find my coin." Is anybody going to actually go down the stairs? Right? And because this Meshuggah has lost a couple of pennies on the ground? No. But what this fellow is a clever fellow. What does he do? He takes out a 100 shekel note. That's a decent amount of money. And he drops that on the ground. Says, "Help, I've lost 100 shekels or 500 shekels. Right, that's a lot of money. People will feel sympathy for that. Come down with the light, shine the light in the ground. He sees his banknote, his 500 shekel note. At the same time, he also sees the two coins. He can pick them up at the same time. That's the situation here. The generation who died in the desert for bringing back the bad report and listening to the bad report, that generation of men, they didn't, Hashem, as it were, was not motivated to go down and collect their souls and take them to heaven. But if Moshe's there, and he's down there collecting Moshe's soul to take it to heaven, all right, I'll bring you up as well. In order to justify in the calculation of the Beis Din Shel Mana, Hashem taking the souls of that generation up to heaven, he would need to have Moshe there outside the land of Israel. But that's only going to happen if they bring back a bad report. So that's why Hashem says, "Shlach lacho anoshim," send for yourself. There's a danger here. I see a danger here. They have Bechira, they can bring back a bad report. So send anoshim. Now Rashi says, and all the commentators say, anoshim means great tzaddikim. And Rashi says they were great tzaddikim at that time. When Moshe sent them, they were great tzaddikim. The niggling doubt that we discussed before of perhaps Hashem will have, maybe hasn't forgiven us, we made the golden calf. That came later. And that's the other thing he says here, which is incredibly interesting. Because now we're going to ask another question. And that is, when he sends the spies, there are two, well, we actually already asked one of the questions when it says here, Ish echad, one man from each tribe. Why does it say that? Not just say, send from the tribes. Call Nosi Bahem. So he says something very interesting. If Moshe Rabbeinu sends, or doesn't send two men, then the situation is going to be irredeemable. Because after all, there was two men who brought back a good report. Two of the spies brought back a good report. Kolev ben Yefuneh from the tribe of Yehuda. He brought back a good report. And so did Yeshua. Remember that? They brought back good reports. And here the Alshich takes us into very interesting territory. It's a Zohar he quotes, it's a Gemara, and it's also in Pirkei Avos. And that is, there's a Jewish concept that when you do a mitzvah, you create a malach who goes to Shemayim, and he is, as it were, your advocate in the heavenly Beis Din, saying that you should get in. If you do a bad thing, if you do an avera, you create a negative malach. And it says in Pirkei Avos, mitzvah gereres mitzvah, a mitzvah causes another mitzvah, and avera causes another avera. It means a malach who's there to help you, to urge you to do another mitzvah and go further in a positive direction. And similarly, at the other end of the extreme, if you do an avera, you create a negative malach who tries to get you to do the same thing again, to replicate itself. It's a spiritual cancer, like a cell, a cancer cell, which duplicates itself and then duplicates itself again, etc., etc. There's a spiritual concept, a spiritual parallel of that. That's when you do an avera. Now, here's the thing. Moshe was not sure whether or not this concept, which is, incidentally, that's universally accepted. Pirkei Avos, that's the Mishnah. It's the Gemara in Kedushin talks about it as well, and the Zohar talks about it. So across the spectrum of Jewish sources, this idea of an avera causing another avera is universally accepted. But here's the question Moshe is not sure of. Does it skip generations? Is my negative choice, which creates a negative malach, who's going to try and, as it were, split the cell, replicate itself, does that affect my children? Is the sins of the fathers visited on the children? The answer very quickly is no. Only, as it says in the Ten Commandments and the Sefer Dibros, only if the children carry on the same behavior as the fathers. Then the father's sins, as it were, stick to them. But not if you change, not if you go in a positive direction. But here's the question. Moshe is not clear on this point. Says the Alshich, Moshe was not clear whether or not my avera, which maybe I didn't correct, would go and attach itself to my children. Now, if it does, and if he's already been warned there's a danger they're going to bring back a negative, bad report about the land of Israel, there are two spies you would not, or two tribes you would never send spies from. And that would be from the tribe of Yosef and from the tribe of Yehuda. Why? Well, obviously, Yosef brought a bad report, a false report, even if he thought it was true. But he brought a false report, a slanderous report about his brothers, accusing them of eating the limb from a live animal, sexual immorality, and saying derogatory things about their half-brothers, the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah. Wasn't true. And Yehuda, who, after they sell him, they dip, remember, they slaughter the goat, they dip Joseph's coat or whatever the garment is in the blood and takes it to Yaakov, and he says, Yehuda says, we found this, I think Joseph's dead. Complete lie. Now, if you lie, you create a malach who's the child, if you like, of that lie, and it wants more lying, more false reports. So the two tribes that you would not send spies from, the tribe of Yosef and the tribe of Yehuda. But if you don't send spies from the tribe of Yehuda and the tribe of Yosef, you'll be knocking out the only two people that did bring back good reports. And at least there was some redeeming factor which allowed the Jewish people to move on from this. But if they all, universally, every spy brought back a bad report, or there was no good voice, no good side to the Jewish people that you could see from this story, then that would make things, the outcome might have been very, very much worse than it was. So Hashem says, Ish echad, Ish echad. One man, Lamati Avoisov, to his father's tribe, To Shlach, you should send them, call Nosim, every tribe that's got a Nosi, including Yehuda, and including Yosef. The ones that you're thinking in your mind, maybe this Avera from the past will reattach itself and repeat itself in the children. That concept doesn't exist. That's not a Jewish concept. Don't worry, Hashem says to them. That's the ones you should send. That's what he does. And then we come to a very interesting, I think that's very interesting, another incredibly interesting insight here. And that is with regards to Moshe's reaction to those two people, Kalev ben Yefuneh and Yeshua ben Nun. So with regards to Yeshua, he davens for Yeshua and changes his name from Hoshea to Yeshua. With regards to Kalev, he doesn't do that. I wonder why, or rather the Alshich wonders why. Now I think at this point I will read to you. This is just to prove I'm actually reading from the Alshich here. And how about this? Listen to this. Let's address this idea. Because of this concept, this fear that an Avera causes another Avera, you can see therefore in the forefathers of the tribe of Yehuda and the forefathers of the tribe of Yosef, Cholos de Dibara. Slander is in the genes, if you like. So each one of them might, these two particular individuals might be the ones who will bring back the bad report. And remember, Hashem says, Shlach l'cho, send Anoshim, the very best. But these might not be the very best because they might have a flaw. a genetic flaw, if you like, a spiritually genetic flaw. Al-Kain Baroisa Moshe Rabbeinu Alav Shalom Kikain. Therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu saw that there was this danger, that they had this danger. Then what happened? Now there is this danger of bringing back a bad report. But the bad report, they've still got freedom of choice, there's nothing you can do about that, and I've chosen Tzaddikim. But the other tribes, apart from Yosef and the tribe of Yehuda, they don't have a history, and this concern doesn't apply. So if I don't have to worry about them, I have to worry about the two who do have that weakness. So I have to do something about it. And in the case of Yeshua, from the tribe of Ephraim, then I'm going to daven for him. But why don't you daven for Kalev? So he says, very simple answer. So Lassi, Nasi Yosef, and Nasi Yehuda. The only two I really have to worry about is Yehuda and Yosef's offspring. Ve'imas Bala ba'ad Kalev. Now what happens if I daven for Kalev? So I'll daven from Kalev, from the tribe of Yehuda. Then what will people say? Yomar Sha'al Hayosei Bal Achlesi and Yosef. He's my brother-in-law. That's why I'm davening for him. So therefore, because I'm not davening for the rest, I don't need to daven for them. But if I daven specifically for him, people say, nepotism. He's davening special favoritism for his brother-in-law. Ve'im al Shevet Menashe, Yisrael B'Kolev, Ve'im Imonim Nispal al Yeshua, and if I daven, this is so good. And if I daven, I don't daven for Yeshua. If I don't daven for Yeshua, what will people say? That was the other thing, the other medrash that the Alshich brought earlier. In last week's Sedra, in the previous Sedra, I should say, Eldad and Medad prophesied in the camp. And what was their prophecy? The prophecy was that Moshe is going to die outside the land of Israel. Yeshua is going to lead the Jewish people in the land of Israel. If I fail to daven for him, if I daven for Kalev, they'll say it's nepotism. I can daven for him. I can daven for Yeshua, though. I can daven for Yeshua. It's not nepotism there. And I change his name. Because if I don't, they'll say, you know why you didn't daven? Because you wanted him to die. You wanted him to tear him down. Because Eldad and Medad said that he was going to lead. You're not going to lead. So therefore, I've got to daven for him. Otherwise, people say, I didn't daven for him in order that he should get destroyed by this. And I get to lead the Jewish people into the land of Israel. Very brilliant insight. One thing comes from this. That two people bringing back a positive report did have a positive effect. It didn't cure the problem. They did as much as they could do. They were outnumbered. But two people made a difference. But there's another lesson from the story of the spies. And I think that applies to all of us. When Moshe Rabbeinu sends the spies in, he gives them various instructions. They've got to look at the people, what the land is like, various instructions. And just before the end of Sheni, it says, and look at the land, or it's a Shmena hi imraza, see if the land is fat, or it's thin, or it's sparse. Hayesh bo eitz, and whether or not it's got a tree. Now that's an astonishing thing to tell them. The land of Israel is hardly the largest country in the world. It's really quite small. But if you look at the land of Israel and don't find a tree, there would be something strange with that. Of course, there's a book called Innocents Abroad by Mark Twain, who visited the land of Israel, and this was in the 19th century. He reported when he traveled from Lebanon to the Galilee, there was not one tree. There wasn't a tree. The land of Israel has only produced, what it can produce. Recently, when the Jewish people went back and took it, but at that time, as we remember from what the spies brought back, huge grapes, that it was doing what it properly could do, which would produce enormous amounts of food. And certainly, there must be one tree in the whole country. Rashi says, "Yesh bo eitz." See if it's an eitz. Im yesh bahem odom kosher. See if there's a tzaddik amongst the Canaanite people who were particularly obnoxious, child sacrifice, Rochov, of course, the Haftarah that we read for the parts of the Meraglim, Shlach L'cha, is Yeshua sending his spies. And then they have Rochov, the Zoina, the harlot, the prostitute, who protects them. She became a prostitute at the age of 10, say Chazal. Now, no girl makes a choice to become a prostitute at the age of 10. It was not something she chose, it was forced on her. They turned their children into sex slaves. They were into child sacrifice. They were horrible, horrible, horrible people. But Rashi says here an interesting thing. Maybe there would be an eitz, a tree. Now, an eitz is a euphemism in Hebrew for a tzaddik. And as Rashi says, and you can find out the verse Psalm, when David HaMelech talks about Rishoyim and the different types of wicked people there are in the earth, and then he talks about the eitz. But a tzaddik's not like them. And then it's like an eitz al pal yimayim, a tree by a brook whose roots go into the river, always creating sustenance, and its foliage is beautiful and lush as a consequence. So an eitz is a euphemism for a tzaddik. And Rashi says, listen to this, im yesh bahem odem kosher, look and see if there's an eitz, not a tree, there's tens of thousands of trees. Go and see, hundreds of thousands of trees. Go and see if there's a tzaddik there, sheyegem alehem susayim, that he will protect the obnoxious Canaanite people who turned their children into prostitutes, who engaged in child sacrifice. One man could have saved all of them and stopped the Jewish people taking the land of Israel. And the one man he had in mind was Eov, by the way. This is astonishing. One person. It says in the Talmud, a Jew is supposed to say every day, B'shvili nivra ha'olam. One man or one woman, because of me the world was created. And one man or one woman can make all the difference to Klal Yisrael. After all, there was somebody called Moshe who was one man who made all the difference. Two men saved Klal Yisrael and allowed them to move on from the disaster of the spies. But there was two men there, but more than that, one man can do this. One man can make the difference if there was a tzaddik. And there's anything, and there's so much, so many lessons to take out from this parsha, is that one man can make a difference. One human being can make an enormous difference and turn the fate of Klal Yisrael around from being chas v'shalom a negative one into a positive one. And that's a good message to take into Shabbos and a good message to go through next week with. One man, you or I, can make a difference to Klal Yisrael. I wish you all a very, very good Shabbos and a wonderful week.